In this video, we'll discuss the currency profile for the New Zealand dollar. New Zealand, just like Canada and Australia, is an open economy, and that means that it's highly dependent on its commodity exports for growth, especially exports of dairy and fruit. And just like the Aussie and the Canadian dollar, this commodity dependency makes the Kiwi dollar sensitive to sudden and sharp changes in overall commodity prices, especially that of dairy and fruit, and means the currency is considered a high beta, which is sensitive to overall changes in risk appetite, expected to appreciate in a risk-on environment and to depreciate in a risk-off environment. Now, even though dairy is still the biggest export for New Zealand, previous years saw a very strong correlation between the Kiwi and things like the Global Dairy Trade Index, but that correlation has become far less important in recent years. The other factor to consider is its dependency on China, just like Australia, as an export destination. Totaling 40% of exports, the country and the Kiwi dollar is very exposed to the health of the Chinese and Australian economies. So let's take a quick look at the data. The New Zealand dollar accounts for just 1% of all global forex transactions, the least popular among the major currencies. In terms of trade dependency, there are three very important ones that we already mentioned. On the export destination side, we have China and Australia, which are very important for New Zealand's economy, with the two countries alone making up 40% of New Zealand's exports. Apart from that, in terms of export by product, dairy has by far the biggest share. Now, it is important to note, like we said, dairy prices used to matter quite a bit for the Kiwi dollar, with big moves seen from the release of things like the Global Dairy Trade Index, but like we mentioned, this correlation has reduced to such an extent that the impact on prices is almost non-existent these days. As we alluded to, due to its commodity dependency, the Kiwi dollar is also considered as a pro-cyclical currency with a high beta, which means we usually expect the Kiwi dollar, just like the Aussie and the CAD, to appreciate in risk-on environments and expect it to depreciate in risk-off environments. If we take a look at the raw data, we can see that there is a strong positive rolling correlation for the Kiwi dollar with something like the S&P futures, and much like the Aussie and the CAD, this relationship might deviate, but the positive correlation has remained intact for quite a few years. Then turning to the other important correlation always worth watching for the Kiwi dollar is the one with the Aussie dollar. Yes, I know that seems strange, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Due to the close trade relationship that these two nations share, as well as the proximity advantage, the currencies tend to move together in sympathy quite a lot. This chart shows the positive correlation between the Aussie versus the US dollar and the Kiwi versus the US dollar. And looking at the raw data once again, we can see that strong positive correlation reflected in the rolling correlation data as well. There will be times when the correlation can break down, where it might not be as strong, but for the most part, we would expect these two currencies to move in tandem. So what tends to happen is that extremely strong moves in either one of these two antipodean currencies tend to have a similar impact in the other one as well. It's not a perfect correlation, but certainly strong enough for us to always keep on the radar.